Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce Mr. Myong. He's been a school counselor for one of the best schools in South Korea for almost 30 years or more. If this is something I'm thinking, is I want to be wealthy and I want to have kids. What would you recommend a wealthy family when they're having raising up a kid? What would you recommend that they do to make sure that they don't become spoiled?
Yeah, I think this comes from one of the conversations we may have had in the past about. I mean, I've had this conversation with my kids all the time, which is it's actually probably the easiest to raise a child if you're ordinary, right? If you're extraordinary in some way, then I think it puts a lot of pressure on the kids to live up to that extraordinary life that you've led as a parent. And then the other thing that comes along with it a lot of times is that, if you grow up with a lot of money with no real, I guess, limitations, then I think you learn a way to live that's probably not conducive to ultimate success in the future. And so I think, I don't know if there's a specific one answer, but I think the first thing that comes to mind, and one of the things that I've tried to do with my own kids, not that I'm so rich or whatever, by any means I'm not, but for the kids, I didn't want them to think that they didn't have any limits. And so, starting in third grade, for both of my kids, I gave them allowances, very small allowances, in which they had to live for the week or the month, depending on the amount, and they were limited by that. And anything that they had to ask extra for. Then they would actually have to, reason out why they needed it, and convince us so that we would pay them. So money, limiting the money and helping them to learn how to budget and how to use it wisely was something that we really intentionally taught them. That's one. I think the other I would have to say is I don't know. How do you learn humility? I think certain people are just humble by nature, innately, maybe genetically. Other kids aren't. But I think when you are living in an extraordinary circumstance like a lot of these kids are, I think it's really difficult to learn that. But I think it's a parent's job to make sure that they learn that one way or another, whether it is, I don't know, embarrassing them is the right word, but I think there are ways in which you gotta kind of know that, okay, you got limitations here, that there are failures that you're gonna run into, and maybe you give them a few. Like one thing that you did all the time with my own son, who was quite athletic, always was I would beat him in everything, and I would intentionally not let him win, right? Even though obviously, if he's 8 and I'm whatever, there's no way he could. And then, once in a while, maybe I should let him win, but I never did. And I'm competitive, so maybe that has something to do with it. But I really think that humility is something that you have to learn as well. And so,
And just going on that, I mean, I'm very young. I'm 17, and a lot of listeners are young as well, which is the first question is interesting. But, um, humility is one of the skills you mentioned are very important for them to succeed. What are other skill sets that you think is really important that they develop as young as possible? I mean, young as possible, that you think is really important based on, the students you've seen across your life, going to college and afterwards, to have like a good life.
there's so many things I think, but I think the first thing that comes to mind is uh, delayed gratification. Right, is a skill that I don't know if it's called a skill or maybe it's a character or a trait that people have that predict success in the future, probably along with IQ, as far as I know from my readings. Along with IQ, it's probably one of the ones that really is correlates with success, future success. And so the idea is, I don't know if you've seen this experiment where you give kids like 4 or 5 year olds candy, and they say, well, if you wait for 2 minutes before you take the candy, we'll give you five, right? And so we figure out like what kids will actually wait and how many kids actually take it because they can't wait. And majority of the kids can't wait, but the ones that can wait are the ones that get the rewards, ultimate rewards, and it turns out longitudinally those are the kids that will succeed in the future as well. So
So it's a more innate skill,
I
or
think there's innate, and then there's also, I think, the discipline that comes along with it, right?
how do you
So,
recommend? I mean, based on like how do you recommend as a person, not the parents, but just person himself,
yeah,
they want to develop that skill set of long term. How do they go about doing it? You know.
I I think yeah, it's hard to say. You know, the thing is, like, I guess I've been working with kids long enough to know it's really hard to actually change them. I think kids, you know, I'm an educator, so I would like to think that I have a lot of impact on the future of a specific, you know, teenager or kid or whatever. But I think the more I run into and the more I work with kids and the more I even raising my own children, um, it's almost like 95% genetic, I think. So they're kind of sort of built into it. And I don't know. I don't know if there's much to be to develop. However, are there ways in which they can give them more opportunities to like learn and to develop those specific skills? Yeah, I think there are. But I think if you're talking about like not as a parent, not as a counselor, not as an educator, by yourself, well, you got to learn how to be self-disciplined. Some kids can do it. I'll say most kids really can't.
He's looking at a classmate. Oh, and okay, I
But
think
it can be developed.
it can be. I mean, I guess you mentioned 95%. You say it's genetic. Then, I mean, this is what I'm thinking. Is I also thought a lot of it is genetic, but you really have to kind of discover what you're good at, like just like naturally, what you seem to be inclined, what you seem. How do you recommend? How do you go about helping students help find like who they are?
Mm. Yeah, I think that's basically what I've always tried to do. You know, try to figure out what their strengths are, along with that, what their weaknesses are, and as they kind of contemplate on their own lives, you know, I guess introspection is part of it. I think they get to a point where maybe, hopefully, they realize something about themselves, right? And I think you're right. I think it is innate, but you don't know what that is until you explore it. And so, along with that, just introspection and talking through about their, you know, strengths and weaknesses, what they enjoy doing, what they don't enjoy doing. I think when they find a passion to be able to pursue it is one thing. I think that's the greatest thing that the parents can do is if they have something, if a kid has an interest of some kind, whether when they're 4, when they're 11, when they're 17, you know, the parents give them the opportunity to explore it. I think probably that's the best thing that they can do. Um, and then, you know, as they go through it, maybe they realize that is their passion, or maybe they realize they don't like it that much anymore, and then they go into something else. But that opportunity has to be there.
Hmm. Okay. And talking about like passion, like this is another question. I mean, this is something I'm thinking a ton about. Is there's some difficulties in life. There's a lot of wars that happening. It's scary, because I want to make sure financially stable. I want to make sure I live a good life. And sometimes it feels like passion searching it doesn't feel like it's gonna give me monetary or the security I want. How and there's like two dominant thoughts. One is that you follow your passion and you'll somehow in the end probably hopefully find a way, or the other one is where maybe your passion is just your hobbies, but then you focus on the really just like I guess not as interesting things which you might have to push yourself to just so you can make sure you're secure and your finances are on point. What theory, what idea or belief would you say you agree more with?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I'm quite pragmatic in most cases, but in terms of this kind of thing, I'm more idealistic in my thinking. I guess I'm fortunate in that my whole career, which took a kind of a weird turn, basically before I graduated from college, from something a little bit more lucrative to education, which is not what you would call particularly lucrative. What I found is that I found a passion. I found something that I was good at as well. So that's a good match. Once you have it, then whether it really brings home enough money for you to be comfortable or not, I just feel like you spend too much time in your career, in your job, to really warrant you spending that much of your life doing it. I just don't think you'll be happy ever. So even if you're making pennies, as long as you can, feed yourself, I wonder, Again, I haven't been in that situation, fortunately, but I wonder if it wouldn't be just worth it just to follow your passion anyway. I don't. That's probably not the something that people who are wanting to be rich would want to hear. But I have a lot of rich friends that are not particularly happy. I have I spent some time in Africa. Some of the poorest people you could ever imagine. Just seeing them genuinely joyful and happy with their lives. There's a stark difference. Which would I rather have? It would be nice to have both. But if I had to choose between one or the other, I'm thinking I want to be happy with less money than unhappy with all the money in the world. But that's my personal view.
I know there's something similar because my hometown in Kyrgyzstan, it's like I've seen a bunch of poor people, like very like minimum wages, and they have good families. But then we live in the opposite, Korea, which has high income, but it's the most depressed country in the world in certain metrics.
Yep. Oh, what metrics would that be?
I don't know. I think suicide rate. I think one of them.
That's true. Yeah.
It's
suicide rate's pretty high. Yeah.
It's number one or number two. But, would you recommend that they really just put in the effort to try to really pay, even with the expensive prices, go to like a really the best prestige university they can go into, or go into a university where I guess it's not as good, but where it's cheaper and maybe they're gonna or cheaper and it's maybe more suitable to more them. How should one figure out like what university is suitable for them? Should they only go for prestige?
Definitely not. Okay. So
Okay.
the simple answer to that last question is definitely not. But the other aspects of your question, I think, is a little more complicated, a little more nuanced, I would say. I think there are certain kids who probably need a place where they are competitive, right? Where they are pushed. They're pushed to the limit. They are stretched. And so for a person like that to go to the best university, which is that's a hard one to answer. Like how do you quantify that or even qualify that? You can't. And so, but whatever it is that they think is the most challenging, the place where they will be growing the most, I think that's the kind of place that they need to go. Other kids, I think they're just not ready for that. I think they need to really go to a place where they're the most comfortable, where they could actually continue to grow. Because just undergraduate, I'll just say, you're still growing. If you ask me when I was 20 or 21, like, are you a completed product because now you're in college? Heck no. I mean, I am just a sort of, a product in the process of getting to something hopefully a little bit better. Is there a place where that would happen better and faster and more effectively than others? Absolutely. And that's the kind of stuff that we're looking at, which is the kind of stuff that I'm working on. I've always worked on, right? It's not about the name, it's not about the prestige, but there is a place that's more right for you as opposed to anyone else. And in the U.S., I guess that's the thing. That's the price that you pay along with it. It's just it's way overpriced. Most of the time, I don't know if it's worth it. However, college grad, I guess graduation and diploma is something that I guess a lot of the employers are looking for, and so it's something that is sort of a necessity. And if you're going to get one of those, then might as well go to a place where you will grow the most through it.
What are like some criteria like that should help that student really find? Like, what are some specific criteria that you think are really helpful?
Well, I guess that's what I work on most, right? And this is the hardest part, and this is the most time-consuming part, is trying to figure out who they are. Right? What is your priority? What's the student's priority? So if I'm talking to you, what's your priority? What's important to you? What do you need? What do you need to avoid? What are the kinds of things that have to be in place so that you will grow at an optimal level? I think there is a bit of comfort level that you need to feel with a specific community that you go to, because every community has a culture. So every school has a different culture, and if you're in the wrong culture, it's going to be an adjustment that you don't want to necessarily deal with when you're paying 80, 90, $100,000 a year, right? So it's a huge investment. Might as well get the most out of it. So I know you also had that question of, okay, is it worth it? Is it worth that amount of money? And so I'll say that U.S. See, this is where it could get controversial, but I mean, U.S. colleges are overrated in large part, and I think the way, where more recently in the last 10, 15, 20 years, online degrees are available for a fraction of the cost. You get the same degree. Is it okay to get one of those? It could be. They also, I read an article about, well, that came out about 10 years ago, basically talking about how, you know, college education in the U.S. just does not fit into the cost of college education in the U.S. does not fit inflation, not even close, right? It's a bad return on investment. But what are you paying for? What are people, still like, I guess, really wanting to pay for is the privilege of being among the elite, to rub shoulders with them. Is that worth 100,000? I don't know. It's questionable. Some kids need it.
To rub shoulders with elites.
Yeah. Others don't. But here in Korea, unfortunately, there's only one way to do it. It doesn't matter. You sell everything you got to go to the most elite university. It doesn't matter how much it costs. If you can get in, you go. I don't necessarily agree with that. But I don't necessarily disagree with it 100% either. It all depends on your situation and the type of student that you are.
What would you say are like resources? So when you try to like develop your skills, trying to understand students and understand what they want, what are the resources where you go to kind of help you understand other people? Because isn't that's your main job is to help people understand? What are resources? Would you
So
say?
for me to,
Yes.
I don't think there's a specific resource. I mean, obviously, I went to school and studied enough about, I guess, psychology and therapy, and then, of course, through the many years I've had in college counseling, realizing what kinds of schools, and I've visited, literally maybe 80, 90 schools, just to go see what it's like, so that I could like personally speak on to that particular community, or what I felt, and seeing if that could be a potential fit for a kid or not. And so as I go through that, like those are things that I accumulate, over the years. In terms of helping kids discover who they are, I kind of take on this person-centered theory, which I think that was one of the questions you were going to ask about, and popularized by Carl Rogers, a therapist in the 1940s, 50s, and it's pretty simple. It's what it sounds like. It's client-centered or person-centered therapy, and that means that you trust that the student or the client or whoever you're talking to has the capacity to find the right path for themselves. So all you have to do is just ask the right questions, have enough conversations with them to just kind of dig in deep in terms of what it is that they're looking for, and what they what they want in their lives, and what is it they're lacking right now. Going through their past a little bit to figure out the past traumas that they may have experienced, or their experiences that may have caused to become the way they are, and then ultimately come to some sort of a conclusion, or an image or a picture of the ideal place that they should go, or they should be a part of, and then they're looking for it.
What do you think are like common like colleges or places they may have gone to, or things they may have studied, which you think is more conducive to happiness generally?
To happiness.
Yes, just like a good life, like a good life, just like financially, whatever you define as a good life. At first, I'd love to ask, what do you define as a good life?
I guess if you're surrounded by people you love, whether it's family, friends, that will support you and that you can support, And then along with that, unfortunately, we have to work. Most people have to work um, to have a career that you are both good at and you love doing, and you have enough money to survive. To me, that's a good life. That as you do those things, so between family and between the work, which basically takes up, I'm thinking pretty much 100%, almost 100% of your life, other than sleep, um, you you have you find value and meaning and a purpose. If you have those things, I think you have a good life.
And what paths do you think are conducive to that? Because certain majors have not the most noticeable, like finance. I heard people are not as happy, and I guess certain universities may not create the best outcome in your life. What would you say are like good paths generally?
Yeah, I'll say that there's no bad university. There's no bad college. As
Really,
long as they're accredited and they're recognized as an
I
institution.
was applying to one university that isn't accredited, so I should not.
Oh, well, I mean, there's some non-traditional universities and things and institutions that you could be a part of. But yeah, I mean, to have some sort of external source, telling you that, yeah, this place is legit, I think usually helps with, not maybe for you, but at least for potential employers later on, right? So something practical you have to think about. But there is no bad university, right? I don't care if you've never heard of a specific college. If you are the number one student at that college or top 5%, you'll probably get into Harvard Law if
Whoa.
you're smart enough, right? Obviously you're smart enough to be a top student. Um, you could go get into Hopkins Med School. You can get to Stanford Business. Just because no one recognizes the name doesn't mean those other universities, the big universities, do not recognize that name. They know a quality student when they see one. And so, we always have this discussion. Like, I used to have to convince Korean parents. This is really hard. Um, would you rather be a small fish in a big pond, or would you rather be a big fish in a small pond?
Hmm.
Which would you rather be?
Not sure. I mean, that's a hard question. Uh, hmm. Hmm. I'd first probably be a big fish in the pond, and then move over to the big pond.
So you could be a big fish in a big pond too.
I don't know if I want to be. I want to be able to not get eaten. I don't know if I want to. I don't think I can beat all the other fishes. I want to. Yeah.
Yeah. If you had a choice between one or the other, research, like this is Malcolm Gladwell's book. I don't know if you've read it.
Outliers.
David and Goliath is another book that he wrote, and it's very clear in terms of just data. Just read a few pages of it, especially the part where they're talking about how many people publish like research papers, right? It's only a certain top percentage, and it doesn't matter what percentage, what top percentage of what school. It's only top percentage of every school, whether it's Harvard Law or Hofstra Law, right? And it's only the elite end up doing those things. Well, if you go to a very elite institution, chances of you being the elite of the elite institution, right? But if you can be at the bottom of that elite institution, but you choose to be in a smaller pond, you will be the elite, and you'll publish everything. You'll own it, and ultimately, who you're going to get? You're going to get more, more money, more notoriety, more fame, more everything, by being in a small pond, as opposed to a bigger one.
Hmm. I never think of it like that.
Yep.
Hmm. I guess okay, let's say another situation is high school students who haven't really done good in school. Like it's a small pond, but they haven't really succeeded in terms of academically. Do you think that they're just not meant for schools, and that they should just try to, I guess, not go to college and have like an entrepreneur, like freelance, just whatever other else direction, or they should try to fix it up and go to a low level school?
Yeah, well, I mean, once you get to, I mean, the other prediction of success, right? This is according to Jordan Peterson, he's one of the people that I listen to quite a bit, and he talks about IQ is one that you can't ignore in terms of a road to success, right? Along with that ability, the discipline to delay gratification. IQ is one of those as well. And so, I mean, I think if you're below a certain IQ, it's hard to succeed in a school in an academic setting. For those kinds of people, what do you do? I don't know. They got to find a different way to, I guess, survive in some ways, right? But, I think there are plenty of people who struggle in school that really, it's only because it's the way it's taught that they're struggling in school, right? If they go to the right school or if they go to the right sort of a learning environment, they could actually excel. And so, for example, like, before ADHD was a thing, well, ADHD kids, they're usually the smartest kids. They're the most creative. They're the most, they can come up with stuff that you would never think of, but they can never sit still enough to survive school. So they get kicked out, they get whatever, they get reprimanded, they get disciplined, they get discouraged because of it, and so they quit school or they go to whatever, a different type of institution. But doesn't mean that they're not smart. So to be able to go to a place, if that's an issue, there are plenty of schools that actually deal with that more specifically. There are schools that are known for that. If you went to a school like that, would you be able to succeed and get a 4.0, be on the dean's list, and go on to Harvard Law? Yes.
Books or podcasts, you said. What would you say are some that you've thought that really changed your outlook on life, or maybe just ones you share often with your friends? Because it's usually an easier question to ask.
Yeah, no, I've been on a what do you call it, podcast spree for the past, I want to say almost 2 years now. This guy has a lot of content, but he's also a very controversial figure, so I'm actually going to be careful about that. It's Jordan Peterson, right? Have you listened to any of his stuff?
A lot.
Oh, really?
I when I shower, I just listen to motivational speeches, and once in a while he pops off as well. So I just shower while listening to Jordan Peterson talking about like life.
Yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, he got some bad publicity back in 2017, which kind of brought him to prominence in a negative way. But he's brilliant. Like, I mean, there's just so many things that he says that make sense, and so I do refer to some of the stuff that I talk about. At least a couple of things I've talked about here is also from him. So I got to give him kudos for that, or credit for that a little bit, I suppose. I mean, but there's nothing really. In some ways, it's kind of like things that you already know, but he puts it in such a way where it says, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." Right. And so I would say Jordan Peterson is one. Malcolm Gladwell, which I also quoted before, is a guy that in terms of his background, I don't know, but he's just an interesting guy with interesting thoughts, and he kind of, without going into too much like research, I think his background is not research, but he is an unbelievably insightful guy that gives insights to things that you never even thought about. So.
I think one very fascinating thing for Malcolm Gladwell, which I've been really taking into account, is he did the research, and everyone knows about 10,000 hour rules of like violinists. Yeah. But the other interesting fact is it's not just the violinists who did 10,000 hours that became experts. It's also the fact that there's no one who spent 10,000 hours who weren't the best. And also, he was also mentioning these pianists. I think Michelangelo. No, not Michelangelo. I forgot that Beethoven and another pianist. I'm not really familiar, but they are, the most famous pianists and composers of all time. But they're also, at their time, the people who made the most amount of works than anyone else. Mm-hmm. So, Malcolm Gladwell is great.
Yep.
I guess this is another question. I'm going to probably give you like a round of like quick fire questions because I'm just curious. Is if you had like a billboard, right, just, where cars would go around and 10,000s of people would see it, what would you write on that billboard if you could write something on the billboard?
And what would be the purpose of this billboard?
Whatever you want, just share it to the world. Most people take it into sort of like a message they want to share. Like I personally would just say, take it all in.
Yeah, no, I guess I've been dealing with students, teenagers all my life, so I just say what I said as I was leaving YSS, which was work hard and play harder. And really, I think that's a key to success. I think there are people who get, I'll just use my wife as an example. She's a workaholic, right? And And so she's amazingly competent in what she does. But you take her away from work, I don't know, like there's certain things that are missing. And so as she's taken on this new job, I this is what we've made a kind of a deal. It's like, okay, when you get home from work, we don't talk about work. Let's go do something. And so just recently we picked up a new sport, pickleball. And we actually were there yesterday, and we were there last week, and we're going to do it next week. And so I'm trying to get her to do those things just to have fun. And that's one thing that she always accuses me of, like, hey, you're never home. Like, I'm always doing stuff on my own, or, whether it's a motorcycle, a trip, or golf, or squash, or tennis, or soccer, or whatever. I mean, it doesn't mean I work. I don't work hard. I work very hard, but I also play really hard. I invest in my play, and I think that makes me very well balanced. And when I come back to work, I'm not like totally out of energy. I am still energized because I played so hard that I can work harder too. So I really, when I said it, when I was saying it, I was like, what do I say? Like, I didn't want to say anything actually in that farewell. Like, I didn't like Pash for making us do it, but he basically forced us. Like, we've never done that before, right? But he forced us to do it, and that's the only thing I could come up with. So, and I live by that. And if you go to and visit colleges, and you look at, you visit with your, like my former students and things, right? Who are the ones that really excel in college? The ones that do everything. The ones that obviously are working hard. They're doing all night, pulling all-nighters. But after they're all-nighter and they take the test, they don't go and sleep all day. They go and play some more and then sleep all day or 2 days.
Something interesting, I guess. Winston Churchill as well. He during his war in World War II, he's very busy. He might actually die. His country might die, but he put some time to draw on paintings. And I just find that like a fascinating thing.
I also heard that he never slept either. So
Oh,
so he had time to do that. But no, it's a good thing. Yeah.
I guess just looking back on your life, what would you say are just some moments? I guess this helps listeners to kind of relate with you more. Is just what would you say are some of your highs and lows of your experience, and what do you think you've kind of learned to the extent where you can talk about it?
In terms of career or personal life?
Just if you can combine them both, that would be better.
Yeah. I was actually talking to my daughter just before I came here about my life as a young person, teenager and college. And one of the reasons that I can never judge another teenager is because basically whatever bad things that you could think of and might have done, made a mistake on, I probably have done it. So for me to judge them would be being totally hypocritical, right? But I'll say that many of those, whether it was, being in a police car and being ripped into shreds in words by a sheriff, or something stupid that I did that I shouldn't have done, or drunken whatever things that stupid things that I may have done in the past, those are lows. But I look at them as highs because if without those experiences, I don't know if I would be as effective in connecting with kids from all rays of life. So all the lows are highs for me, as long as the lows don't stay lows, which thankfully that has not been the case. And I think there was a student the past couple of years that used to come into my office almost every single day and ask, "How happy are you?" And she would always ask me, scaled 1 to 10, right? 1 to 10 every day. And I would always say 10, 10. The first time I said it, she was like, "No, there's no one says 10." I said, what are you? Like 4, 3, 2. Literally, I'm not joking. I'm not lying. I'm just saying I'm 10. Like I can't think of anything more that would make me happier than I am right now. And then when she was asking that question every day, it was the same thing, because I love my kids. I love my wife. I love my job. I love, you know, all the kids. I'm satisfied. I feel like I have value and meaning and purpose in what I'm doing. Why would I not be happy? Yeah, maybe if I got a little more sleep, because sometimes I have trouble sleeping. If I had more sleep, maybe I could be 10.5. But honestly, like 10 is where I'm at. And I'm at 10 pretty much 95% of the time.
Hmm. And what are the 5% times when you're not?
Yeah, when like, okay, once in a while, like, actually I have a shoulder tear, and so I can't play tennis. I can play pickleball, but I can't play tennis. That kind of stuff kind of puts me down. I feel like I'm feeling my age. Yeah, I wish I didn't hurt, or I could do this a little bit better. Yeah, but those are like little bits here and there. It doesn't really impact my overall mood though.
Hmm. I still love the quote. Your lows became your highs because you used them properly. Because it's weird because I'm very young and it's like, and my friends are young and people are helping me. Um, and it feels like we're at this age where we're like kind of like we messed up on freshman year, we messed up on sophomore year. I bet you hear that a lot.
Yep.
Um, if you could, tell yourself like 17. You said you made a lot of mistakes back then, but if you could like teleport, like just say you teleport and just pop out that 17-year-old Mr. Myong or Joon at that time, what would you tell him?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I don't think I would say anything. I think it would spoil the surprise. I I think I would. Would I do anything different? Would I be able to tell myself to do something different? No, I'm absolutely satisfied where I'm at. I can't think of anything that I would be able to tell myself that would make it any better.
Hmm. I'm sure. Do you think like because you're very satisfied with your life, you are counselor? Do you incorporate a lot of the things on yourself, on your life, or do you struggle to do that? Because I heard it's like the psychologist. He's able to tell everyone's problems, but he can't diagnose and help always his own.
Yeah, no, I think my wife would say that about like I listen to everybody else, but I don't listen to her. That's her complaint. Yeah, that's one thing I should probably do a little bit more of and do a little bit better. And I'm actually trying to do better now, knowing that I'll be an empty nester in about a month, and so I don't have a third or fourth person to kind of um, distract the fact that I don't talk as much as I should to my wife. So yeah, so that would be one. Um, yeah, I think I probably give more advice or advice. No, I guess I try to help kids more than I honestly. I probably do a better job on myself, but for the most part, like I am satisfied with where I'm at, and so I guess I don't really need it. It's I'm probably fooling myself. So
I mean, it's working. I mean, if you're satisfied, it's like I heard this quote. It's like a lot of people can a lot also smart people. They tend to a lot of them go into nihilism, like a bunch of smart guys, and you kind of have to trick yourself maybe to kind of turn optimistic. You kind of have to tell yourself certain
mm.
things because if you're brutally honest about everything all the time, it kind of gets self.
Mm.
At least that's my thought.
Yeah, I think the way of nihilism is almost inevitable for straight thinking, logical thinking, smart people.
And how do you help? Because the teenage year is one of the
Yep.
pinnacle moments of nihilism.
Yep.
How do you help those kids?
That's hard. Like finding a purpose, finding real vision for your life is really really hard. And this is where, I guess working in a Christian school makes it a little bit easier when it becomes that sort of hopeless. Like hopeless leads to nihilism, right? Hopelessness. But I don't know. For me, I guess I'm a pretty conservative Christian who believe that there is a God that's bigger than anything. And so whatever it is that I am doing within that umbrella. And so is there a purpose to what I'm doing? I believe there is. And it doesn't matter what it may seem like. Ultimately, if you believe that, then there is nothing that is not covered. So, yeah. So for kids, like there are kids I've prayed with. There are kids who, the conversation has turned into something that where they're looking for something, they're searching for something, and so we need to talk about it because I think that's important. I mean, for me, yes, I've talked about my career, I've talked about my family, but without that central theme of God, of faith, what is it that I'm living for?
Yeah. I would call myself an agnostic. I haven't found my faith yet, but it's just like there's so much difficulties, and I think when we see, I mean, I mean, high school is kind of like the training point. It's gonna be much tougher. And as I interview people, it's like people have gone through really, really difficult times. Like I just couldn't imagine, losing their own children, having literally like people stealing hundreds of millions of dollars, and I'm like, that hurts. What would you say? I'm trying to think on my mind. You talk about friendships. You have friends. Friends are important. You would say, how do you think? Because we're young, we haven't developed the full social skills, or some of us just think we're better than everyone else, and we don't need to talk to anyone else. How would you recommend like people go about building friendships? Because certain times, certain friend groups you should probably not be a part of. But sometimes in high school, no one's perfect. Everyone has problems. How should you go about making friends?
Hmm.
Like, should you try to be a part of that group if there's no one else?
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to belong, right? And so that's a very very important thing. And so I know how difficult that is. But I think as you grow older, you will realize that really true friendships there aren't that many. So how do you get to that one or two or three that you just require, right? That you need. I think I think it all comes down to honesty and vulnerability, right? Unless you're vulnerable and unless you're willing to be honest and vulnerable with the person that you're trying to befriend, you'll never be friends. I think too many guys have too many friends that are not really friends, right? You are almost colleagues in an activity. You play basketball together, you do film together, or whatever, right? But have you ever really opened up and trust them enough to share your vulnerabilities and be honest with yourself with it? And once you do that and they accept you and they do the same in return, now you got BFFs, right? Um, I, there are people who say, yeah, I've got like 5 best friends. Like, no, you don't. That makes no sense. There's no way. Maybe you have one, maybe two, maybe three, 5, a group of 10. Nah, you guys are just buddies that hang out. But when push comes to shove, do you have a real friend? You won't know until push comes to shove. I believe you have fewer than you think, and you don't need that many anyway.
Hmm. Well, Mr. Ring, I'm so thankful for you for being on the pod. I have more questions. Probably ask them privately, but um, yeah, I'm really thankful for everything, and I'm thankful for you for believing me. I don't know why, but it's really helpful because yeah. And I guess the last question. I mean, it's just a off-topic question, but this is something I've been liking recently. It's what purchase of $100 or less has like most profoundly impacted your life?
Oh, that was in the script. $100 or less.
Yes, has most profoundly changed your life.
Oh my goodness.
I like to. I think it's a funny joke. If it's a funny question to just throw off, guess.
Yeah, that would throw me off. I'll say when we discovered Spotify.
Spotify for podcasts or for music.
I don't listen to music that much
Mm.
anymore, but podcasts, yeah.
But you can just use Apple Podcasts for
Yeah.
free.
But I never really discovered, I didn't really get into podcasts until Spotify.
Oh.
And for whatever reason, I just stumbled upon one. And then I've been basically, every time you see me with the earphones on, I'm listening to something. And there's a lot of good impact that has made it on my life. would say.
Me as well. Podcasting is it's amazing. It's
Yeah, it
what we're
is.
doing right now.
Yeah, it is. It is an amazing media that just didn't exist 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's love. I think. I mean, we both love podcasts. And thanks once again for being on the pod, Mr. Myong, and
Yeah.
I'm really thankful. This is Mr. Myong, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.